Nagbabalik po ang DepEd Hour para sa Tele-Turuan. Itatampok po natin ngayong gabi ang ilang video clips kaugnay sa mga aralin sa science, mathematics at edukasyon sa pagkapakatao. Sa unang set ng video clips sa segment na ito, matutunghayan natin ang mga aralin sa science at mathematics. Halina pong makinig at manood upang matuto sa ating Tele-Turuan.
Good Delta Alpha Yankee. In short, good day. This is Menard F. Miguel from Tele-Turuan City Senior High School, and I am your teacher presenter for Tele-Turuan. In the previous lesson, you've learned about how organisms change over time. Today, I will guide you about the classification of organisms based on evolutionary relationships. For us to understand more our lesson, let me first give you the objective of this discussion. And so at the end of the lesson, you are expected to describe how the present system of classification of organisms is based on evolutionary relationships. The diversity of living organisms on Earth is truly astounding, almost overwhelming. Humans have come up with ways of organizing or classifying biological diversity throughout human history. Organisms can be classified according to any number of criteria, including overall similarities, colors, ecological functions, and so on. However, it is generally agreed that the most useful way for scientists to organize biological diversity is to group organisms according to shared evolutionary history. This way, the grouping not only results in an organized classification, it also contains and conveys information about our understanding of the evolutionary history of these groups. In scientific terms, the evolutionary history and relationship of an organism or group of organisms are called phylogeny. Phylogeny describes the relationships of an organism, such as from which species it is most closely related and which organisms it is thought to be have evolved. It also provides information on shared ancestry, but not necessarily on how organisms are similar or different. Therefore, phylogeny is a study of determining evolutionary relationships or patterns of the descent of an organism. Through evolution, or simply change over time, all of the species of organisms that are alive today have descended from ancestral species. The evolutionary relationships of ancestral species and their descendants can be diagrammed using branching evolutionary trees. An evolutionary tree indicates which ancestors gave rise to which descendants, just like making a family tree. Traditionally, biological classification schemes included the idea of ranks, such as species, genus, family, order, class, and so on. In this system, or the Linnaean system, for example, there is a class Reptilia and a class Aves. However, the bulk of evidence supports, and the majority of scientists now agree, that the group Aves belongs within the larger group Reptilia, or the birds, share a most recent common ancestor with crocodiles, which are generally included in the class Reptilia. Within a traditional Linnaean system of classification, this means that either the class Aves is demoted to something below a class, or that a class Aves exists within another class Reptilia. Problems such as this have prompted many scientists to propose that a system of naming and classification of biological diversity be rank-free. Classification systems then only indicate the hierarchical structure of groups according to the current understanding of their evolutionary history, leaving out rank labels. Modern classification is based on evolutionary relationships called systematic or cladistics. Cladistics is a classification based on common ancestry. Phylogeny is the evolutionary history for a group of species, evidence from species, the fossil record, and molecular data shown with branching tree diagram. But what is a cladogram? A cladogram is a diagram that describes evolutionary relationships among groups. It is based on phylogeny, which is the study of evolutionary relationships. Sometimes, a phylogenetic tree is also called cladogram, though there are minor differences between the two. Biologists would group organisms based on their physical appearance. This strategy is called evolutionary classification cladistics through the advances in genetics and biochemistry. This form of analysis, which newer features that serve some kind of purpose and features organisms that are considered innovation. This illustration is an example of cladogram. It describes evolutionary relationship among group of species. You have to take note that the important factor that the organisms in the clade or monophyletic group stem from a single point on the tree is through varying the size of a clade depending on which branch point is being referenced. The term monophyletic breaks into mono, meaning one, and phyletic, meaning evolutionary relationship. Remember, it is necessary to classify organisms because it helps in the identification of living organisms, as well as in understanding the diversity of living organisms. Classification helps us to learn about different kinds of plants and animals, their features, similarities, and differences. With that, thank you so much. Good day to our dear televiewers and subscribers. I am Menard F. Miguel from Cabanatuan City Senior High School, and I am your teacher presenter for Tele-Turuan. In the previous lesson, we've discussed the classification of organisms based on evolutionary relationships. Today, we will focus on different biotic potential and environmental resistance that affect population explosion. For us to understand more our lesson, let me first give you the objective of this discussion. At the end of the lesson, you are expected to explain the different biotic potential and environmental resistance that affect population explosion. Have you ever heard the expression that some efforts are like trying to push a boulder uphill? In biology, environmental resistance is a little bit like the hill, and the boulder is a population of organisms. If you were trying to push a boulder on a flat ground or downhill, it would be much easier. Same with pushing a pebble or piece of gravel uphill. It would be no big deal. But a boulder going uphill is a different story. Environmental resistance factors are all the things that keep a population of organisms from endlessly increasing. They lower the chances for reproduction, affect the health of organisms, and raise the death rate in the population. Environmental resistance factors include factors that are biotic, or the living, and abiotic, which are non-living. Biotic factors are things like predation, parasitism, lack of food, competition with other organisms, and disease. Abiotic factors include drought, fire, temperature, and even the wrong amount of sunshine. You can see how all these things, biotic and abiotic, would become an uphill battle your boulder pushing. Environmental resistance acts like a heel pushing back against population growth. Biotic potential is what urges a population to grow. Biotic potential has something to do with how well a species can survive. including how well adaptable it is to the environment and its rate of reproduction. Some species produce a lot of young very often, while others produce fewer babies less often, but invest a lot of energy raising and protecting them. So, while the biotic potential of a species causes the population to increase, environmental resistance keeps it from increasing relentlessly. When the population is small, environmental resistance factors are not as big of a factor. There may be plenty of resources around so the population can keep growing quickly. It is kind of like pushing a piece of gravel uphill rather than a boulder. But as competition gets steeper and resources starts to become limited, population growth starts to slow. The rate of population growth is dependent on biotic potential and environmental resistance. Biotic potential measures how well a species has adapted to survive by defense mechanisms, resistance to adverse conditions, migration, and seed dispersion. While on the other hand, environmental resistance is adverse biotic and abiotic factors that trace the death of population. Example, predators, parasites, unfavorable temperature, and lack of water. The combination of the biotic and abiotic factors determines the carrying capacity of an ecosystem. Carrying capacity is the optimal maximum density of a population that can be supported by a defined space. If the population approaches or exceeds the carrying capacity, competition for resources will set limits to the population density. Population explosion is a result when all conditions favorable to the population occurs for an extended period of time. This time, let us talk about distribution or dispersal. Distribution or dispersal is the pattern of spacing among individuals of the population. There are three types. The first one is all about clump dispersion. Clump dispersion is an individual aggregate in patches that may be influenced by resource availability and behavior, like efficiency in hunting and guarding the young. Second is all about uniform dispersion. Individuals are evenly distributed here. It may be influenced by social interactions, such as territoriality. And third is the random dispersion. The location of one individual is independent of other members of the population. Let us have the population size and density. Population size is the number of individuals in a population. Population size influences the chances of a species surviving or going extinct. Generally, very small populations are at greatest risk of extinction. Population density is the average number of individuals in a population per unit of area or volume. Population density is not static. It is influenced by death, birth, and movement, like immigration and emigration among populations. Population growth is due to a higher birth rate than death rate. New individuals are recruited into the population through growth and immigration. Populations are regulated by, first, we have density-dependent regulation, in which the population growth rates are regulated by the density of a population. Most density-dependent factors are biological or biotic in nature and includes predation, inter- and intraspecific competition, accumulation of waste, and diseases such as those caused by parasites. Usually, the denser a population is, the greater its mortality. We also have density-dependent regulation in terms of competition for resources. Increasing population density intensifies competition for nutrients and other resources, reducing reproductive rates. Second, we have predation. Predation can be an important cause of density-dependent mortality. If a predator captures more food as the population density of the prey increases, as the prey population builds up, predators may also feed preferentially on the species. Predator-prey relationship of some animals, like the snowshoe, hare, and the lynx demonstrate a cyclic pattern. Third is territoriality. Territoriality can limit population density when space becomes the resource for which individuals compete. Cheetahs use a chemical marker in urine to warn other cheetahs of their territorial boundaries. The presence of surplus or non-breeding individuals is a good indication that territoriality is restricting population growth. Fourth is disease. If the transmission rate of a disease increases as population becomes more crowded, then the disease impact is density dependent. In humans, the respiratory diseases influenza or flu and tuberculosis are spread through the air when an infected person sneezes or coughs. Both diseases strike a greater percentage of people in densely populated cities than in rural areas. Then, we also have density-independent regulation. These are the factors that are typically physical or chemical or biotic in nature that influence the mortality of a population regardless of its density. They include weather, natural disaster, such as storms, forest fires, flooding, pollution, and others. Example, a bird may be killed during an oil spill, regardless of how many birds were present in that area. Its chances of survival are the same, whether the population density is high or low. With that, thank you so much. Again, this is Menard F. Miguel from Tele-Turuan City Senior High School. Goodbye everyone and God bless.
Magandang araw! Ako si Glenda E. Santiago, guro mula sa Paaralang Elementarya ng Makatubong. Narito ako upang kayo ay gabayan sa ating aralin sa asignaturang Mathematics sa ikalawang baitang. Pagkatapos ng ating aralin ay inyong matututunan ang ating layunin na nakalulutas ng multi-step routine at non-routine problems gamit ang pagdaragdag at pagbabawas ng 2 hanggang 3 digit numbers na may kaugnayan sa pera at gamit ang mga angkop na estratehiya. Bilang paghahanda sa ating bagong aralin, magbalik-aral muna tayo. Tingnan natin ang inyong kakayahan sa paglutas ng suliranin. Unang suliranin, si Regine ay nagbenta ng face mask. Sa umaga, siya ay kumita ng 210 piso at sa hapon ay 420 piso. Magkano ang kinita ni Regine sa buong maghapon? Tama! 630 piso. Pangalawang suliranin, si Ginoong Joel ay bumili ng 570 hygiene kit para sa kanyang mga kabarangay. May 484 na pamilya ang nakatanggap ng hygiene kit. Ilang hygiene kit ang natira? Tama! 86 na hygiene kit ang natira. Magaling mga bata! Mukhang handang-handa na kayo sa paglutas ng suliranin gamit ang inyong kaalaman sa pagdaragdag at pagbabawas. Halina at simulan natin ang ating bagong aralin sa isang maikling kwento. Familiar ba kayo sa online selling? Ito ay paraan ng pagsasapamilihan ng mga produkto gamit ang cellphone o laptop. At syempre, dapat may internet connection o load. Dahil sa online selling, maaari ka nang makapamili ng mga produktong gusto mong bilhin at ito ay ihahatid na sa inyong bahay. Ganun na kadali ang bumili ngayon ng mga produktong gusto natin. Ganito ang hanap buhay ng pamilya Santos. Maagang gumigising si Aling Rosa upang gumawa ng iba't ibang klaseng puto. Pagkatapos ni Aling Rosa magluto, iaayos naman ng magkapatid na Jeanette at Jep ang mga ito sa mesa at kukuhanan ng larawan upang i-post o ipakita ang mga tindang puto sa kanilang mga suki gamit ang Facebook. Maaga din gumagayak si Mang Wilberto upang dalhin naman sa bahay ng mga suki ang kanilang biniling puto. Dahil masasarap ang tinda nilang puto, marami silang naging suki. Kaya naman, kinailangan ni Mang Wilberto na bumili pa ng mga bilaong lalagyan ng mga puto. Samahan niyo akong basahin ang sitwasyong ito. Bumili si Mang Wilberto ng 50 bilaon na lalagyan ng puto. Sa unang linggo ng kanilang online selling, 22 bilao ang ginamit para sa bibingkang kanin at 25 bilao naman para sa putong puti. Ilang bilao ang natira? Sa paglutas ng ganitong suliranin, mahalagang maunawaan itong mabuti. Una, ano ang tinitinda ng pamilya Santos? Tama! Puto! Pangalawang tanong, paano nilang tinitinda ang kanilang produkto? Magaling! Kinukuhanan ng larawan at pinapakita ito sa kanilang mga mamimili gamit ang Facebook. At panghuli, ano ang magandang katangian ng kanilang pamilya? Mahusay! Ang kanilang pamilya ay mapamaraan o sa ibang salita, madiskarte. Sa panahon ngayon, dapat maging mapamaraan tayo upang matugunan ang pangangailangan ng pamilya at upang may maipon at mapagkunan sa panahon na kailangan natin ng pera. Balikan nga natin ang sitwasyon. Bumili si Mang Wilberto ng 50 bilao ng lalagyan ng puto. Sa unang linggo ng kanilang online selling, 22 bilao ang ginamit para sa bibingkang kanin at 25 bilao naman para sa putong puti. Ilang bilao ang natira? Kaya mo ba itong lutasin? Siyempre, kayang-kaya! Sundan lang ang mga ituturo kong hakbang sa paglutas ng ganitong suliranin o routine problem. Una, unawain ang sitwasyon sa pamamagitan ng pagsagot sa mga tanong na ito. Ano ang tinatanong sa suliranin? Tama, bilang ng natirang bilao. Ano ang mga datos sa suliranin? Mahusay, 50 bilao na binili ni Mang Jerry, 22 bilao na ginamit para sa bibingkang kanin, at 25 bilao para sa putong puti. Pangalawa, magplano kung paano ito lulutasin. Isiping mabuti ang sagot sa mga tanong na ito. Anong operation ang dapat gamitin? Mahusay, addition at subtraction. Ano ang pamilang na pangungusap? Magaling! 50 minus 22 plus 25 equals N. Ito ang ating pamilang na pangungusap. Pinangkat natin ang 22 at 25 gamit ang parentheses dahil kailangan alamin muna ang kabuuang bilang ng ginamit na bilao sa pamamagitan ng pagdaragdag at pagkatapos ay ibabawas ito sa 50. At panghuli, lutasin sa pamamagitan ng pagsasagawa ng mga operations na nilahad sa plano. Ano ang tamang sagot? Pagsamahin muna ang 22 at 25 sa pamamagitan ng pagdaragdag at pagkatapos ay ibawas ito sa 50. Gawin natin. 50 minus 47 equals 3. 3 bilao ang natira. Hindi ba madali lang nating nilutas ang suliranin? Dahil sinunod natin ang mga hakbang sa paglutas nito. Kanina ay tinalakay natin ang paglutas ng routine problem sa pamamagitan ng pagsunod sa mga hakbang. Ngayon naman ay talakayin natin ang paglutas ng non-routine problem o di pangkaraniwang sitwasyon. Narito ang presyo ng mga puto na tinitinda ng pamilya Santos. Isang bilao ng biko, 400 pesos. Isang bilao ng putong puti, 300 pesos. At isang bilao ng bibingkang kanin, 450 pesos. May 800 pesos si Aling Cora. Bumili siya ng 2 uri ng puto at sinuklian siya ng 50 pesos. Ano kaya ang mga puto na binili ni Aling Cora? Ito ay non-routine problem. Sa una, parang mahirap lutasin, pero kayang-kaya mo yan. Sa ganitong uri ng suliranin, maaari tayong gumamit ng trial and error. Tama! Trial and error. Subukan natin. Kung bumili siya ng isang bilao ng biko sa halagang 400 pesos at isang bilao ng putong puti sa halagang 300 pesos, ang kabuuang halaga ng kanyang binili ay 700 pesos. Dahil 800 pesos ang pera ni Aling Cora, ibawas natin ang 700 pesos. Ang sukli ay 100 pesos. Tama ba ang hula natin? Naku, hindi! Dahil 50 pesos ang sukli niya sa nilahad na suliranin. Umisip pa tayo ng ibang combination. Kung isang bilao ng putong puti kaya sa halagang 300 pesos at isang bilao naman ng bibingkang kanin sa halagang 450 pesos, ang kabuoang halaga ng mga ito ay 750 pesos. Kung 800 pesos ang pera ni Aling Cora, ibawas natin ang 750 pesos. Ang sukli niya ay 50 pesos. Tumugma ba ang ating sagot sa nilahad na sukli sa suliranin? Opo, kaya ang sagot ay isang bilao ng putong puti at isang bilao ng bibingkang kanin ang binili ni Aling Cora. Subukin natin ang inyong kakayahan. Sagutin ang sitwasyong aking ipapakita. Humanda na! Gamit ang mga hakbang sa paglutas, sagutin ang mga tanong sa ibaba ng suliraning ito. Ang binabasang aklat ni Ethan ay may 120 pahina. Kailangan niya itong matapos sa loob ng 1 linggo. Nabasa na niya noong Lunes ang 24 na pahina at 29 na pahina naman noong Martes. Ilang pahina ang hindi pa niya nababasa? Ano ang tinatanong sa suliranin? Tama! Bilang ng pahina na hindi pa niya nababasa. Ano ang mga datos sa suliranin? Mahusay! 120 na kabuuang bilang ng pahina ng aklat. 24 na pahina ang binasa noong Lunes at 29 na pahina naman noong Martes. Anong operation ang dapat gamitin? Magaling! Addition at subtraction. Ano ang mathematical sentence o pamilang na pangungusap? Tama! 120 minus 24 plus 29 equals n. Dahil kailangan muna nating alamin kung ilan na lahat ang nabasa niya noong Lunes at Martes. Kaya pagsamahin ang 24 at 29. Ano ang sagot? Tingnan natin! 120 minus 24 plus 29. Pagsamahin muna natin ang 24 at 29 sa pamamagitan ng pagdaragdag o addition. At pagkatapos ay ibawas ito sa 120. Gawin natin. 120 minus 53 equals... Paano isasagawa ang pagbabawas? Alamin natin ang sagot sa pamamagitan ng pagpapangkat. Simulan natin sa kanan o sa isahan. Dahil mas mababa ang 0 kaysa sa 3, kailangan nating humiram ng 10 sa katabi nitong bilang sa kaliwa o sa sampuan. Ito ay magiging 10. Maaari na tayong magbawas. 10 minus 3 equals 7. Isunod natin ang bilang na nasa sampuan. Dahil mas mababa ito kaysa sa 5, kailangang humiram sa bilang na nasa daanan o hundreds. Ngayon, maaari na natin gawin ang pagbabawas. Kaya ang sagot ay 6. Ang sagot sa suliranin ay 67 o 67 pahina pa ang kailangang basahin ni Ethan. Laging tandaan, sa paglutas ng suliranin, basahin itong mabuti at alamin kung ano ang tinatanong sa suliranin, ano-ano ang mga datos sa suliranin, anong operation ang dapat gamitin, Ano ang mathematical sentence o pamilyang na pangungusap? At ano ang sagot? At kung ang suliranin ay non-routine o hindi pangkaraniwan, maaaring gumamit ng trial and error. Ilustrasyon gaya ng mga larawan, pwede rin, o pagguhit, at iba pang paraan upang malutas ito. At sa pagtatapos ng ating aralin, ilabas ang inyong lapis at papel at lutasin ang suliraning ito. Si Novi ay may 50 pesos na pambili ng mga materyales para sa kanyang proyekto na Big Book sa asignaturang English. Bumili siya ng 2 kartulina sa halagang 24 pesos at isang glue sa halagang 15 pesos. Magkano ang natira sa kanyang pera? Humanda na sa pagwawasto ng inyong mga sagot. Narito ang mga sagot sa suliraning. Tama ba ang inyong mga sagot? Binabati ko ang bawat isa dahil sa natapos nating aralin ngayon. Nawa ay nasiyahan kayo at natuto sa oras na ito. Magkita-kita tayo sa susunod na edisyon ng DepEd Tele-Turuan. Muli, ako si Teacher Glenda E. Santiago ng Paaralang Elementarya ng Makatbong. Mag-aral ng mabuti upang kaalaman ay mapagyaman. God bless you!